Hey guys, Lee with LG Speed and Custom here. In this video, we are putting a C-notch in Steve's 1950 Meteor. So this is part 2 on Steve's 50 Meteor. In video 1, we designed and built the 4-link system that's in there with axle mounts for the airbags. Now in video 2, we're going to be installing a C-notch, upper airbag mounts, and last a Panhard bar. So these C-notches, there's one mocked up in there already, and this is the other one. Steve started this before he brought the car to me. And while I'll give him an E for effort, I think we're gonna touch up a bit of the welding on this. Steve welded this all up himself, and yeah, he's not 100% confident in his welds, and I'm sure they'd be fine, but maybe we'll just redo them a little bit anyway. So once those are all kind of re-welded together, we're gonna fit them in the car, weld them in, cut the frame rail out, and then there's a little cap that goes inside there. Once the C-notch is welded in, we can jack the rear end up in there as high as it'll go and then build our upper airbag mounts. The lower airbag mounts are already done on the axle. We just need the top ones. As well as, we gotta put shocks in this car too. So we'll cross that bridge at the same time. And then once all that is established and sitting in there, then we'll build the Panhard bar to stop it from moving back and forth. So first thing we're gonna do, I'm gonna take the other one out of the car. It's already mocked up in there. And we'll just clean them up on the bench and then maybe re-weld them. So I had a heck of a time getting this thing apart, and I think it's because of how wide this is in here. I don't know why it's so wide. Maybe it's like a universal kit that fits, you know, different applications. So probably once I'm done cleaning this up and welding it again, we'll probably cut this because we don't need any of that. And it just makes it really hard to fit it in the car and get it through the wheel well. To clean this up, probably just gonna clamp it down to the bench and maybe use a stone like that on the grinder and just knock Steve's weld down. We'll clean it up and then just go over it one more time. Like I said, I'm sure it would probably be fine, but you know, since we're in here, we might as well just clean it up a bit, make it look nice.
I've got this ground down pretty good. Obviously, I can't get in the corners as well as I'd like. So I think what I'm gonna do now is hit it with the TIG welder. I'm gonna do 2 passes. I'm gonna do one with no filler rod and just get like a nice deep root weld in. Maybe up in here where I can't get to it, I can blend that together and flow that nicely. And then we'll hit it and do one more pass with a filler rod, which will be more of a cosmetic to make it look nice. It could get a little weird with the TIG because we're going kind of over top of MIG, and TIG weld sometimes doesn't like that, but we'll make it work. These are all welded up now. They didn't turn out too bad considering that I went over like a crusty old MIG. You can still see there's a little bit of weirdness in there, but you know, it is 80% better than it was. The thing that I am happy with is, remember before how blotchy all the heat transfer marks were from where it was welded before, and now it's nice and very, not perfectly even, but pretty even. So I am confident that the car will not break in half anymore. I'm just using a little 90-degree grinder here to clean up the frame rails where they're gonna sit while those other pieces are cooling down. Those frame rails, they're all cleaned up and as good as they're gonna get. So these have cooled down now to the point that I can touch them again. So I got the zip disc on here now, and we're just gonna slice through and get rid of all this excess. There's like 3/4 of an inch on there that we don't need. And it'll just make it easier to fit it in the car, because right now this is rubbing up against the inner fender. Trimming the fat. So I believe the idea is that these just slip over top and you weld them in place and then cut the center section out. Kind of like that. I think the hardest part of this is going to be getting them both square, like across this way. But I think that's pretty good. Let's put our angle finder on it. I mean, putting one in is easy. The hard part's going to be getting the other one. That is very close. That's 89 degrees, which is really close. All right, I think I'm just going to make sure that we're pretty much situated. So remember, this 4-link, as it comes up, it's going to be moving forward. But I'm pretty confident if we put this right about here, we got lots of room. How are we this way? Oh man, bang on level right there. Cool. All right, I'm going to drag the welder over and get this one tacked in. And once this is tacked in, then we can fit the other side to match. So I just had like a little stress out moment. This 4-link, if you remember from the first video, it's gonna come forward as it goes up. 4-links make an arc. They don't go straight up and down perfectly. And I was worried that the center of our axle, or our axle tube, was gonna hit the front of this before it hit the top of this. So I just did a whole bunch of measuring, a whole bunch of math, some CAD drawings, and was like, yeah, it's definitely gonna hit this before it hits here. So we had to move this forward, which is gonna change a whole bunch of stuff. And then I was talking to Steve and was like, how low do you want your car to go? And he's like, well, how low can it go before the tires hit the top of the fenders? And I was like, that's a great question. So I measured from the top of the tire to the fender, and we can only go like 3, not quite 4 inches, like 3 3/4 of an inch, which is gonna put the top of the axle like right here. That's where we're gonna go before and then the tires are gonna hit the fender, making all this kind of completely unnecessary. I think Steve bought this from Gambino Customs as like a Gambino C-notch kit, and I have no idea why it is so freaking big. It does not need to go that high, but I mean, it's not a bad thing that it's that high. It gives you can put a bump stop or something in there. I have lots of room for a bump stop. Maybe it's so that you've got something to mount your airbag to, because we're gonna have to put like a bar across the top that our top of our airbag's gonna mount on. So I don't know, it'll be fine still. I mean, Steve's already cut that out, so it makes sense to have it that big, I guess, to fill the hole. All right, so we're perfectly level this way, but we got to tip this way a little bit. So I'm going to
tack it here and tack it here. I might grab a C-clamp to suck that in. And then I got a ratchet strap here that we can hook on the top and pull from over here, and it's got to go like 1.5 degrees. I'm gonna grab a C-clamp really quick and clamp those down. Uh-oh. Okay, we're still level that way. Yeah, 1.5 degrees that way. So I'll tack it there, move our C-clamp, squeeze that side, and then pull it over. Okay, we're still level that way. Zero. Zero. Okay. All right. .1, close enough. 0.2. I think I can live with that. All right, now the hard part, making this perfectly mirror image symmetrical. Okay, from this point, this little corner here to this hole, we're at 14¼ on both sides. We are pretty close to level, not quite. Before I turned the camera on, it was right on 0. There we go, okay. Close enough. And if we put the straight edge across here, and balance it, we are from there over to the other side, we're level. So I'm gonna tack it. And then same thing, once I tack it, we do need to, oh, we're so close, but yeah. We'll tweak that once we get it kind of tacked in place. .00. .00. 0.00. Yeah. Cool, man. So I went ahead and welded these in all along here, down there. I did not weld the insides yet because we're gonna have to cut this out. We're all welded up on the back side over there, on both sides. Worked out really nice. So I'm gonna drop the axle down now. I got it tacked just right here and here, so I'll just break those tacks, lower it down again, and then we can cut the center out. Well, first we can weld the other side because I can't get the wheels off right now. So we got to drop it down to get the wheels off, and then I can weld the other side, and then we'll cut this inside part out. And then I think we'll put it on the ground and see how low it goes. With the wheels out of the way, I'm gonna go ahead and just weld this up, and then we can sawzall that section out of there and put the filler piece in. Well, that ain't going anywhere. The other side's all welded up now, so I'm gonna take the zip disc first before the sawzall and just zip disc the outside edge, and then I'll go and do the inside edge from inside the car, and then just sawzall through like the middle part. So now we've got these pieces here that came with the C-notch kit, and they just fit up in there like that to kind of cap everything off. Using a C-clamp to hold it up like that, and we've got it level, so go ahead and weld those in. All right, you guys excited to see how low Shoebox Ford will go without cutting the wheel wells out? Bam! Look at that. The top of the tires have bottomed out in the wheel wells. So this is what I was talking about how that C-notch is kind of unnecessarily big. The drive shaft is definitely not gonna go underneath here, so we'll have to cut this out, cut that cross member out. As far as our wheelbase going too far forward as it goes down, I think it's fine. You know, if you really like sit there and study it, you can tell that it's a little bit forward, but not enough that I would ever worry about it, especially once Steve puts his fender skirts on. Well, it's been a few days now, but we're back on the shoebox project. I had to get caught up on a couple website orders and stuff. By the way, when I'm building all this stuff, like these shoebox 4-link brackets and stuff that I built, if you're building a shoebox at home and you need that stuff, get a hold of me. I build lots of lots of stuff for people watching the YouTube videos, like the Comet swap. We put the 302 in Shannon's old Comet. The motor mounts, probably made 30 sets of those motor mounts now since those videos came out. Just made a set of Cummins motor mounts from when I put the Cummins in Brown Sugar, my 72 Ford crew cab. So yeah, feel free to get a hold of me either through the website, lgspeedcustom.com, or if what you're looking for is not on the website, just shoot me an email at lgspeedcustom@gmail.com, and happy to get in touch and build you some stuff. So now that that's out of the way, had a good chat with Steve because he was talking about cutting those wheel tubs out and going an inch lower. And we've decided that to cut those wheel tubs out and move them up an inch, well, probably an inch and a half, so you had a little bit of clearance to get the car to sit an inch lower, is probably more work than it's worth. So we're not going to do that. I've just mocked up the drive shaft in the car, and like I thought, we're definitely going to have to cut that cross member out. And I've also mocked up the seat, and I think the seat is going to be okay. Steve's a really tall guy, so he's got the seat sitting far back, and he's lowered it quite a bit already to compensate for the chopped roof line. But I think the seat's going to be okay. Once the drive shaft comes up, there should still be enough room, and if for whatever reason there's not, Steve and I have decided that maybe we could go with a two-piece drive shaft and have a carrier bearing behind the seat. That way the seat can stay low. But I think plan A, I think will work. We'll find out. I'm going to cut that cross member out, and then we can get the drive shaft where it needs to be. This drive shaft was just a random drive shaft that Steve had in his collection, and the slip yoke fits the C4 transmission, but as you can see, we're going to be too short. So I'll cut that cross member out next, get this up to the height that we need, and then we can measure for a new one and get the drive shaft shop going on that while we finish off the rest. With the new drive shaft, we're going to get the smallest diameter tube that we can, just to get that much more clearance. There's where we're hitting right there. So we've got our floor pan and then the cross member. Probably just cut the whole thing out, because I think if we notch into the cross member, like just cut this bottom part off and maybe bring it up to the top here, I still don't think it's going to be enough. So we'll cut the whole thing out, get our drive shaft where it needs to be, and then we can build a new piece that's going to go in there. Steve's going to do all the floor work himself, so we don't have to worry about any of that, which I'm okay with because I'd rather do this. Beautiful. Well, with this piece cut out, we can get the drive shaft up to about where it needs to be. And it's close, but it fits. I can still slide my hand between the bar and the seat. So I think if we go with a smaller diameter drive shaft, this one's pretty big. This is probably, what, 3 inches or so? I don't know how small we can go, but if we go with the smallest we have, it's just gonna give us even more room. All right, we're gonna measure our drive shaft now, but before we can measure that, we need to figure out our arc. Remember back to video 1, 4 links, they don't go straight up and down. They make an arc, and we need to figure out how far our wheel is moving back and forth on that arc so that we can build the drive shaft to accommodate that. So I've taken a measurement with the angle finder off our bars right now, and it is 16.5 degrees. I know the length of our bar from center to center is 18 3/4. So I've drawn it up on the computer here. And this bar here represents where we're at right now. We've got from our joint at the front to our joint on the rear axle, we're at 16.5 degrees and 18.75 inches in length. So when we go all the way up,
to raise the car, I know that those airbags have 8.25 inches of travel. So I've measured from here down 8.25, and that's going to give us where our bar is at full height. 18.75 inches from there to there. Then if we go in the center right here, that's where it's going to be at our longest length. So if we measure from the center there to the straight line through there, we have 0.772 inches. So about 3/4 of an inch that is going to move in and out as it goes up and down through its cycle. Pretty minimal. So I just removed our slip yoke from the drive shaft because we're not actually going to use that drive shaft. It's too fat and it's too short. To get the slip yoke off is really easy. There's these little snap rings in here. You take the snap rings off, put it in a vise, use a big hammer and a socket. I always use metric sockets because I have no other use for them. And you just pound it through. Comes out this end over here. Then you can slide your cap off, wiggle it apart. There's lots of videos. If you don't know how to take a U-joint apart, oops, our cap just fell off. If you don't know how to take a U-joint apart, there's lots of videos on YouTube to do that. That's not important right now. What's important is this piece. We need this piece. We're gonna stick this in the tail shaft. So we're gonna slide this all the way in. If this was not an airbag car, we would slide it all the way in and then pull it back out, I don't know, about an inch or so, and call it good there. Because this is an airbag car and we're going to be going in and out, I'm going to slide it in a little bit further. So that's where it bottoms out. Let's go back far enough that we can get the straight edge through there. That's about an inch. That's probably pretty good there. So the reason we don't want this bottomed out in there is because when it bottoms out on there, it pushes on the inside of the transmission and causes all sorts of problems that you don't want. The reason why we don't want it out like we had with a standard spring car is because as the suspension is going up and down, right now it is as far in as that suspension is going to go. Like, it's not going to go any higher, which means it's not going to come any further forward. Right now it's at its furthest forward point. As the springs, the air springs, the airbags fill up, this is going to move away. And as that moves away, this is going to pull out. We don't want it to pull too far out though, because then these little spline shafts will become disengaged and we don't want that. So I think if we have it so that we can fit this in there, that'll probably be fine. Let's go in a little further. That'll probably be fine. Keep in mind, that's going to go back 3/4 of an inch, which means this will pull 3/4 of an inch out. Let's put a mark on there. We got our red mark on there now. So that's probably 3/4 of an inch. A little more. Yeah, we'll call that about 3/4 of an inch there. Maybe a little more. Now we'll put a spline or a line on there. So yeah, we're good. We've got that much still engaged in the transmission, so we'll be okay. All right, let's push this back into our original line right there. And now we're gonna measure for our actual drive shaft. So when you call the driveline shop on the phone, they're gonna wanna know the center to center measurements. That's what most drive shaft shops go for. And what they mean by that is the center of this U-joint to the center of that U-joint. And to do that, we just measure with a tape measure. From the center of there to the center of there is 56. So we're gonna call our drive shaft shop now and tell them we need a drive shaft made, the smallest tube diameter, 56.5, center to center on our U-joints. I've already measured the U-joints, so I know what size they need. This is just a standard 4 to 8 inch, so it uses a 1310 U-joint. This end is a 1330, which is bigger. However, they do make a conversion U-joint that is 1330 on one side
and 1310 on the other side, which we can use for this. So basically we're going to want 56.5 inch center to center with 1310 end yokes, a 1310 U-joint for this side, and a 1310, 1330 conversion U-joint for this side. If you don't know what U-joints you have, you can easily go online and just look at like a U-joint chart, and it will give you the measurements for each U-joint. And the only measurements you need is how wide they are and how big the bearing cap is. That's it. So pretty simple.
I just got off the phone with the Driveshaft shop. We're going to send the slip yoke out there with a courier. It's cheaper than me having to drive all the way out there. So along with that is I've included a diagram that basically explains what we want. It's got my name, phone number, what car it is, C4 transmission. We're gonna have a 1330, 1310 conversion joint on this end, 8-inch rear end with a 1310 U-joint on this end, and we want 56.5 inches U-joint to U-joint. So from there to there, with the smallest tube possible for maximum floor clearance. We'll put this in the box, send it off, Driveshaft shop can do their thing, and we're gonna keep working.
All right, before we move on to building our upper airbag mounts, we're gonna build a Panhard bar. The reason I wanna build a Panhard bar first is so that I know exactly where the rear axle is gonna be located when we are aired all the way out, and then we can build our upper brackets to accommodate. Panhard bars, just like a 4-link bar, as they go up and down, they're going to create an arc, which means this rear axle, as it goes up and down, is going to move side to side to follow that arc. So the reason I want to do the Panhard bar first is because if I just square it up right now and build our upper bag mounts to fit, you know, as it airs up and down, that bag is going to arc, and I want it so that when it is bottomed out, the airbag is lined up so that our airbag doesn't end up sitting like that. When it's aired up, there's enough movement in the rubber that it will be fine. So that arc that Panhard bars make caused a lot of controversy on the internet amongst all the keyboard warriors that like to over-engineer things. Oh, you can't have an arc. If you build a Watts link, which is basically a Panhard bar that goes there to like almost like an idler arm and goes that way, it keeps it totally centered. Well, Watts links are a lot of work to build, and they take up a lot of space. So let's go do the math on how much arc a Panhard bar would actually make in the real world application on this. So we've got more than enough room to run a 34-inch Panhard bar. So at our ride height, which by total coincidence just happens to be our half travel as well, because we've got 8 1/4 travel in our airbag, which means we can go 4 1/8 one way and 4 1/8 the other way. So when we're at ride height, we just happen to be half travel, which means our 34-inch Panhard bar would end right here on this line. If we take our 34-inch Panhard bar and go 4 1/4 or 4 1/8 inches up, lands us right there. As you can see, we're a little bit short. How much too short are we? 0.251, a 1/4 inch, which means from our total arc is only a 1/4 inch. So if we split the difference on that, that's only 1/8 of an inch that we have to accommodate for. Is all the engineering of building a Watts link really worth it for 1/8 of an inch? I don't think so. So what we're gonna do is when we set the rear end up at our ride height, which is also half travel, we're just gonna kick it over that way 1/8 of an inch, basically like preloading it 1/8 of an inch that way. That way at its maximum length of its arc, it's 1/8 of an inch over, and as it comes down, it's gonna come 1/8 of an inch, or sorry, a 1/4 of an inch that way, which will bring it 1/8 of an inch over our center line. Make sense? I think so. So we've got, I went and picked these up from the local 4x4 shop. They sell these way cheaper than I can build them. We've got sleeves that go in there, all the nuts and bolts and stuff. So let's build actually we're gonna raise this back up to ride height which is 4¼ inches higher. We'll raise it back up to ride height. We'll scooch the rear end over this way, 1/8 inch, and then we can build our Panhard bar level across the top, weld it in place, and then wherever it sits when we drop it, well, it'll sit 1/4 inch over this way. We'll drop it, get it sitted where it's supposed to sit, and then we can build our upper airbag mounts to suit those dimensions.
Before you all start freaking out, no one not lifting on the bumper. I've got the rear end sitting where it needs to be. It's preloaded 1/8 inch that way. We're gonna make this Panhard bar out of some 7/8 DOM tubing, because that's what I keep in stock. It's the same size that's used for early Ford tie rods and drag links and stuff. Gonna put a mark on there using this little valley in the old table saw workbench. And that is because we need to notch this for our ends, and we need them to be, come on, yeah. We need them to be on the same plane. So this way we've got a reference point when we put our notch in. We can make sure that our stripe is lined up to the top. And then when we do our notch on the other side, as long as our stripe is lined up to the top, our ends should be indexed okay. So these ends are 1¾ inch tubing. So I've put a 1¾ inch hole saw in the tubing notcher. This just attaches in the drill press here. It's got a little clamp that holds our DOM in there. Note this line that we put on there is in line with the little point on here. So when we do this side and then flip it around to do the other side, as long as this line is still in line with that, we should be okay. Boom, there we go, perfect fit. We flipped it around the other way now. Got our line in there. We've got our length marked out, which is 32 7/16. So we'll cut it again. Both ends are notched now. I've got it kind of sitting on the bench here. That's dead center. So we're gonna weld it up. Keep in mind, I've got the grease nipple pointing in a direction or an orientation that when this is bolted in the car, we'll be able to access it easy. This is all put back together now. I put the bushings in and the sleeves in. There's a special grease that you got to use with these. If you use regular grease, it, I don't know, it eats them or something. So usually it comes with the bushings when you buy it. This end here, I've got these little tabs that I sell on my website. These are, I originally built them as shock tabs, but they work so good for basically any kind of tab. So I've got those kind of mocked up on there right now. We're gonna fit this in the car and then tack these to our C-notch kick-up. That end's tacked in place. As you can see, our rear end is at 0. So now we need to lift this up till it's at 0. And then build a bracket going from this end over to the top of the rear end housing. I've taken a few measurements and drawn up this. This will be the first piece that'll come off the rear axle and go up, and then our Panhard bar is going to mount there, and then this way from here coming back, if you were to look at it this way, we're going to have another gusset to stop it from going that way. So that's going to sit like that. And now we're going to build a gusset from here down to here just to stop it from going like that. So that gusset's basically going to go like that. Let's weld this up and then we can fit it in the car and weld it to the rear end housing. All right, well this is 8,000 degrees. So I'm going to go clean up. Ooh, even with the gloves on, it's really hot. So I'll go clean the paint off the rear end housing while this cools down. That's sitting in there. Let's go ahead and weld it to the rear axle, and then this end here is still just tacked, so we can probably fully weld it as well. And then our Panhard bar is done. And there's our Panhard, all welded up. Welded along there, both on inside and outside, and then we've got this guy fully welded all along here. I have not done this back edge yet because our block is in the way, but we can do that once the block comes out. So you're probably wondering two things. One, why did you have to make this so high? And that's because we had to keep this parallel with the axle, so it's dead level right now and the axle's dead level right now. And if I drop this down, so like this point here is attached to the frame, which means it doesn't move. And our Panhard bar, or not our Panhard bar, our 4-link bar is going to be coming up. So I had to make sure that there was enough room that this will come up and not interfere with that. It would have been nice to run it over top of the axle instead of ahead of the axle, and then we wouldn't have that issue. But because the C-notch, again, is way bigger than it needed to be, so there was nothing really to attach it there. We would have had to attach it up here, and that would just make it even higher. So I think we're okay. I haven't measured from here to here yet, but I was hoping, if my eyeball measurements were correct, that this would stay below here so that when it does air out, like the trunk floor, when Steve makes his new floor, he can make it this height all the way across, and this will still clear. So we're close here, but we're still okay. I can fit my fingers through there. And I mean, this should never ever be able to get any closer to that unless like something breaks. And if it breaks, you know, we got other things to worry about. So that's pretty much as close to that as it will ever get from here. As it arcs up, it's going to go away, and as it goes down, it's going to get pulled away. And again, that is 1/4 of an inch in total that it will travel with a bar based on this length, which is pretty much, you know, I planned it to make it, you know, as long as possible. And that's pretty much as long as possible. The longer the bar, the less the arc. Okay, Lex is going to run the forklift, and we'll lower this down. Okay, go down, Shannon. Incredible. There we are on the ground. All right, we're on the ground. That worked out pretty good. It's a smidget higher, but pretty dang close. It's below where the floor is gonna be, so that worked out okay. And we've got good clearance through there. Tons of room in there. Happy with that. So now we can start building our upper bag mounts.
So these bags compress to 2 3/4 inch of a height. That's very, very hard to mock up to build our upper bag brackets. So what I've done is built these little guys, and these are essentially mock-up bags, and that is 2.75 inches. So that is what this bag compresses down to. We've got the same mount on the bottom, the same mounting orientation on top. So what we can do is bolt these into the car on our lower airbag plates that are already built, and then we can just build the top to fit this. So we've got both our mock-up bags in place, and I think we're going to take some 2x3 tubing and build a bridge that spans across from this kick up over to that kick up. And that's going to do two things. It's going to give us something to build our airbag brackets off of, and it's also going to tie these together to give it some strength so that, you know, the original kit, let's back up a bit here. The original kit, these are supposed to kind of weld on like that. That's the way that the Gambino kit designed it. And it lifts off the axle, but that is taking all the stress and the load from the car and pushing this way, which, you know, is going to want to push that kick up over. Like the kick up is plenty strong, but it's just welded onto, like, the original frame rails in this car are only 1/8 inch, and they are only boxed in the front. These ones, Steve put some boxing plates in the back, but that's a lot of twist on that. So if you can put a bridge from here over to here, it's going to tie that together and make it nice and beefy. The bridge is sitting in there. It's not tacked or anything yet. It's just kind of pressure fit in there. I had to put it in 3 or 4 times because the frame rails are tapered, so I'd put it in and then mark it and trim it, and eventually got it to where it fits the taper nice. And I noticed while I was putting it in is this side here, that C-notch, as I was like wedging it in and out of there, that C-notch would just flop all over. Like it, there was not a lot of support going this way. So once again, putting this across to tie those in together, I think is really gonna improve and help this situation, make it nice and strong. So we're gonna build our mounts, or our upper bag mounts, that are gonna go from there up to our piece of 2x3 tubing now. So I just cut this guy out. We're gonna fold these tabs up, and then they should sit on the bottom of that piece of tubing. Cut 2 of these guys out, and I'm gonna weld them in there like that, and that will just brace it up and give it some, basically like a gusset. Because this way here, that's, you know, if you get into some crazy slaloms and stuff, that might fold and bend over, so this will prevent that. These are all welded up, ready to go in. So as you can see, they don't quite slide under. I made them a little bit taller on purpose, and the reason for that is because right now this car can't move. It is bottomed right out. The tires are jammed in the fenders. So I built those a little bit tall so that when it bottoms out completely, the tires aren't rubbing on the fenders, because that way, you know, if you're going down the highway or something and blow a bag or blow an airline or something and this thing airs right out, it's gonna just lock your back end right up. So this way we got a little bit of clearance. So I'm gonna lift the car up just a little bit and slide those in place. We'll line everything up, and then we can probably weld everything up, start moving on the shock mounts. Lifted it up just ever so slightly, and we got these guys sitting in place now, and our cross member is zeroed out. So I'm gonna start tacking stuff in place, I think. This is all welded up now. So I think we can pull our little mock-up plates out and put some airbags in. Notice the gap there. And then on this side, it is just about touching. And that's because our airbags are offset ever so slightly to compensate for our Panhard arc. Now, when they get aired up and the Panhard bar levels out and moves the rear end over, there's going to be enough flex in the airbag to compensate for that, and it's going to work out great. While I had the forklift under it, I blew this wheel off and welded up the backside of this Panhard mount as well. Now we can put the bags in. Got some fittings in, going to a 3/8 push lock. Both bags are bolted in place now, so we're gonna let the forklift down. And now we can build our shock mounts. Look at how nice and flat these sit. There's no funny angles or weirdness to them. We've got good clearance through here. So it should be pretty good. So these are the shocks that Steve supplied with the kit. I think Steve supplied these. I don't think they came from Gambino. But anyways, these are the shocks that we've got. I've used a ratchet strap to compress them all the way to they're bottomed out, because our suspension is bottomed out right now. So that way we know from there going up, we're gonna get the maximum stroke that we need. These are the brackets that came with the Gambino kit. So I've mocked it up on the axle and use these upper brackets, which they're notched for like round tubing, and we don't have round tubing, but it looks like they're gonna work really good just like that. So I've gone ahead and drawn up a new set of top mounts that are 3 inches so that they go all the way across here, and basically have this same dimension on this end, so that way we can have a nice bracket welded to here, and then we're going to use these bottom brackets that came with the Gambino kit. Here's the shock part number 37078 by Monroe. Here's our upper bracket ready to cut out. Well, these aren't gonna work. I just tried to mock it up and we hit down here. It doesn't get a sharp enough angle. So I've come up with a new one that is basically the same as this, but it comes straight across rather than coming down. And that gives us a lot more travel. So I'll just replace these two with these ones and we should be okay again. I've mocked it up with our 2.0 version and it's gonna work great. So I've got one held in place with a magnet. I'm just gonna tack this all together. We'll tack the top ones and then bolt our compressed shock on, line our bottom ones up, tack them, and then just do the same on that side. The side's all tacked in place. Before I weld it up, I'm gonna duplicate it on this side just to make sure that everything will be happy. I did this side first because it's the side with the shorter axle tube. So that way I could make sure that we weren't gonna end up on here or something. Like if we built our shock off this side and say brought it down to there and then transferred it to that side, we would end up on there, because most rear ends, one side is shorter than the other. I've got both sides all tacked together.
Before I fully weld this up, I'm gonna quickly hook up some air lines and air this thing all the way up, just to make sure that our shocks don't like reach their maximum extension before the air bags are at their full height. I don't think they will be, but it's better to just be safe than sorry. It sucks cutting stuff off when it's fully welded.
This is just 3/8 airline, and I got a couple push connect fittings in there, and just hooking it up to a Schrader valve. Don't have to get super fancy because Steve's gonna redo all this. But I wanted it long enough that you could air it up without having to like crawl inside the trunk. All right, let's put some air in here and see what happens. Hopefully those tack welds hold. Oh, get the ground out of there. Shock is still going. There's 70 pounds in the bag. Well, it goes plenty high. Let's see how our shock fits. This is obviously fully extended. Actually, I can tell we're gonna be fine already because fully extended, you can see this like pinch weld that they got going here, and the pinch weld is not exposed on there yet. So I can just tell from that that we're not fully extended out, which means we can go ahead and weld our shock brackets up. All right, our shocks are all welded up, bolted in with some grade 8 fine thread bolts. I think this job's done. Let's put it on the ground. A couple days have passed now, and we've got our drive shaft back from the drive shaft shop. So this is a 2.5-inch diameter shaft, which is a full inch smaller than the one that we were using for mock-up. So we should have lots of room. Let's throw it in there and finish this job off. Okay, so that's bottomed out all the way in there. And yeah, we got about an inch here, so that's good. Let's pull it back. Put our U-bolts on. All right, let's see how much seat clearance we have. So the seat mounts in the floor are gone. So I'm just assuming that the seat sits on these little metal pads that are welded in here. And when we're in there, I can still slide my fingers between the bottom of the seat and the drive shaft, which is good. So I think by the time Steve builds his floor and then puts some carpet
and stuff in there. It should build it up enough that it'll be fine. I mean, it'll be fine as is, but it's tight. But if the seat goes up just a smidgen with the thickness of the carpet, it'll be even better. So, but that's Steve's deal. Steve's going to do all the sheet metal stuff in here. So I think the last thing that we're going to do is right here where I chopped this out. I think we're going to build just a little piece to tie that together again. And that's it. So I just found this little half-shaped or half a moon C-shape deal. This was a pipe notch that I made for something that I cut on the wrong side of the line, so it was too small and I couldn't use it. And it was in my scrap bin, and it's going to work really good for this. So I think it's a little bit wider, so I'm going to mark this and then shave it down, and then I think we'll weld that in and then maybe build a little horseshoe reinforcement. So I used some cardboard and just made kind of like a little template here, so now we can transfer that to the computer and we'll make something that's like, you know, a little more streamlined, but we've got our basic shape and parameters. I took this template, before I took it off the car, I traced the back side of it so that I knew kind of where our frame rails were, and here's that C-notch piece in there. I took a picture of that and uploaded it into Fusion 360, and from there I was able to actually trace it, and we've come up with this. So I'm going to cut this out now and we'll see how it fits. This guy's trimmed down to the same width as the original cross member, so it's going to go in there like that. We got our little horseshoe dealio made that's going to go like that. So all that's left now is just to weld it all up. All right, there we go. This job is done. That's how you put a 4-link and airbags in a shoebox Ford. Easy, isn't it? Steve's gonna continue on from here. He's gonna come pick the car up, take it back to his shop, and do all the rest. So, yeah, that's it. That's it for this build. Thanks for watching. Make sure to check out the website, lgspeedcustoms.com. Get yourself some LG Speed and Custom merch. And that's it. Back to, probably going to be back on the Fargo next, so get that thing finished up. Thanks again for watching. We'll see you guys later.